So here's another interesting story this week. I use the word interesting a lot, but this certainly is interesting. We talk about what we want to see out of the games, and we all want to see the realism and accuracy and all that good stuff. Uh, Mike Wang conducted an interview with Forbes.com, talking about the problem that Stephen Curry poses for them in developing 2K. And we talk about there being video game numbers, and Stephen Curry's been putting up some video game numbers, but in terms of being able to code it so Stephen Curry can put up video game numbers and not be a cheat code or too cheap, kind of like a Tom Chambers in Lakers versus Celtics, or a Bo Jackson in the in the football game in the early '90s. One of those really cheap characters, cheap players. How do you account for Stephen Curry's amazing shooting this season without being really cheap, or making him either too cheap to use by the user or too cheap in the hands of the CPU, which is definitely a problem in the hands of the CPU with the way the CPU can sometimes take over. It's interesting that they're actually struggling to represent Curry, because Curry is not only putting up video game numbers, but better than video game numbers this season.
It makes it interesting to see, given the new hardware and things we can do and all that stuff, and given what the actual players are capable of these days, it's how much of a drastic change from their traditional formulas that they do things that they're going to have to basically reinvent the wheel to
account for this one player who's doing some really out of this world things.
Yeah, or a couple of players that are not just one entirely in that, but where they're having to defy the way the traditional games were coded in that sense, or the players were rated in that. So I could see that being an issue further down the track as, I guess, humans become more superhuman. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we do have some quotes here from the Forbes article. Taking threes off the dribble also definitely discouraged in NBA 2K, says Mike Wang, gameplay director of NBA 2K, especially after over-dribbling beforehand. The formula, which also incorporates a lot of advanced metrics, has mostly worked to the point that the last couple of 2K games have received universal praise for its balanced and realistic gameplay. These rules to keep digital basketball shooters in check apply to real-life basketball playing after all. I say mostly because there's a dude named Wardell Stephen Curry Jr., whose ability to make insanely difficult three-pointers has thrown all the basketball conventional wisdom out the window, which it certainly has. To be completely honest, we are still looking for ways to better translate his game into NBA 2K. He's a rule breaker when it comes to jump shooting. He becomes a problem in the video game world, where we've been trying to train our gamers that certain types of shots should be rewarded versus others. And that's the thing. Curry hits some ridiculous shots.
Yep.
And shots that if you made in the game, your opponent would rage quit. If the CPU makes them, you're going to throw the controller and say that it's cheese. but it makes them, and that's the obviously they can do it and make him do it. But then how do you do it so it's balanced?
It doesn't seem rigged.
It doesn't seem rigged, exactly. It says they've already tweaked the gameplay a bit to give Digital Curry a bit more leeway in jacking threes department, but they still want to discourage over-dribbling hero ball. But they're on it. We're going to have to invest even more time in future iterations to really let Steph be Steph in future versions of NBA 2K. So their own cover player is causing them some problems with his amazing play. But again, it really speaks volumes about what Curry is doing this season with his efficiency and shooting, and just the kind of shots he's hitting, because we've seen some hot shooting before. We've seen players have the 50, 40, 90 seasons in their percentages, but with the kind of shots that he's taking and the volume, especially, is more than half his shots are from 3-point range, and which is insane in itself. So it's it's pretty crazy.
I'll say, I'll ask a similar question, but given the way that hardware and games are developed now compared to back in the day when Jordan was in his prime, would they have the same problem with the scale of a lot of things that he could do in that? So,
well, that's the thing. You've seen the highlight against the New Jersey Nets where he jumps and he goes in and around three players and lays it up on the other side.
Yeah.
Again, if a player hits that shot when you pack the paint, and I've talked about this in a few articles as it pertains to realism in basketball video games. things like that happen. They shouldn't be happening too much, and by players who don't really do them in real life, obviously. But we have a mentality as gamers that when you do the right action, make the right input, you should succeed. I mean, and I want to do a video about this actually. I mean, you take a platform game like a Super Mario, for example.
Yep.
You know, how do you win Super Mario? You make your way through the level, and I'm going with old school Mario here because I haven't had a Nintendo console since the 64. So, so let's take a classic one. You know, a Mario 3 on the original Nintendo. Fantastic game. How do you win? You get to the end of the level, reach the goal for the level to complete it. Along the way, avoiding traps, defeating enemies, or dodging them. Using pickups, power-ups to your advantage, and you know, you do everything right. You don't get hit by the enemies. You make all the right jumps and everything. You get to the end of the level. You do everything right with the right input. You expect to win. Desire has a great creed. You know, don't play video games. Play basketball.
Yep.
Of course, we are still playing video games, basketball video games. So the mentality is there as gamers to be like, okay, so I've done everything I need to do defensively. I should have blocked the shot or stolen the ball or forced the miss or got the rebound. You know, I've done everything right. Why did I still fail?
Yep.
But obviously, when you're going against a Stephen Curry or a LeBron James or any other scorer who's difficult to stop, sometimes, just as in real life, they're going to get their points, you know, despite your best efforts.
Yeah.
So that is a bit of reality that we have to keep in mind when we play games, because on one hand, we want that reality, but on the other hand, we want to beat the game and know how to master the game and think, oh, well, I've mastered the controls. I know how to win. I know what to do with the games. I'm not just mashing buttons. You know, I'm not just button mashing. I know how to play the game. I'm doing everything right, yet I'm not stopping the player or I'm not making the shot, because in real life, you can do everything right and still come up empty.
That's true.
So it's one of those hard things to really translate to games.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy, and it's yeah, the video side of the brain, like playing, yeah, it'll get frustrated by it, but yeah, in real life, there'll be moments when you're playing as best you can in defense, and that player will still get the shot, and it could be that, you know, you still get the little tip of a block, but it's not enough to deflect the shot entirely in that. So yeah, but again, I guess when it seems to be happening too much, where it feels that rigged or scripted, then
I mean,
that's when I can see like the controllers or rage quits and
well,
things.
that's the thing. I mean, balance is still important, and it should feel that you've got as much chance of a realistic chance of doing everything. I mean, we talk about defense. Obviously, at the other end of the floor, you can run a play to perfection, get your players a wide open shot with a great shooter, and miss. That will happen in real life too.
Yep.
You know, no one shoots 100%. As much as Curry's been shooting the lights out, he's not hitting 100% of his shots somehow. So, you know, and you have to kind of accept the result. But as you said, when it feels too scripted, like the CPU's like, well, I need to win, so suddenly your hot shooter who's been shooting well all game is suddenly not going to hit a shot at all.
Yep.
And I'm just going to drill 10 turnaround fadeaways from 19 feet. They're all going to swish in the next, the next 10 shots that I take as a CPU. It does feel false difficulty. It feels unbalanced. It feels unfair, which is again what you're getting at there. So yeah, you need the realism, but you also need the balance, and then you also need to let the user feel control. So that's why when people say that the producers are lazy and stupid and everything for not getting it right, I mean, you want to take real life and put it into a video game? That is easier said than done. So, you know, and that's not to say that I will always give developers a break over problems, because there are things that I think could be done better and that need legacy issues that need to be fixed and everything. And obviously, you know, stuff I want to see them get better. I think they really want to see that too. But if it was that easy to make a basketball game that played a perfect game of realistic basketball, don't you think it would have happened by now?
Yeah, and given how long, it's basketball video games have been around now, so yeah.
Yeah. And you go back and play some of those old games with realistic tactics, and they kind of play along. I've mentioned this before, NBA Live 95. You try and play that realistically with a like you go back and play NBA Live 95, like trying to play NBA Live 16 or NBA 2K16, it kind of plays along as much as it can, but then it's like, well, I'm well, it's obviously not actually thinking that, but then it's kind of like it says, you know what, I'm an old game and this is the best I can do with my AI, so here's some video game tactics for you. But it's always kind of been there, and you can definitely see the improvement over the years, and they're getting closer and closer to it. But it's a strange philosophy that we both kind of have, that we have as gamers.
Yeah.
The two minds that we have, wanting to win but wanting the realism, wanting to dominate but also not taking this into account. Yeah, so it's easier said than done, but it's a hard challenge that our friends at EA and 2K are taking on. But it feels like they're inching closer to it, and that's promising.
Yeah, hopefully, either by the end of this generation or sometime early next generation, that we'll have we'll be a lot closer to having something that could, find that balance and that we've all been looking for. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, the Oculus is right there around the corner, so soon we'll be on the court ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe.